Inflation is upon us. Food shortages getting worse across the country. Empty shelves, chip shortages, can't get cars, can't get computers. And it's going to get worse. Joe Biden's going to spend $6 trillion more at a time when it makes absolutely no sense. We had Max Kaiser on the Timcast IRL podcast recently, and he said the actual inflation rate is probably 10 to 15%. Well, it's officially reported as around 4.2 or so percent. Max said they're lying because then they'd have to increase Social Security payments. It would have a dramatic impact on what they're supposed to be doing when inflation gets this high, and they don't want to. But my friends, this is the Great Reset. I'm reading this article from the Wall Street Journal, How to Know When Inflation is Here to Stay. And they talk about how households are flush with cash. How do so many households have so much money? Ain't nothing to buy. And because of that, they don't want to work. But if people don't work, ain't nothing to buy. That's the Great Reset. And this story comes out at a time when we get a bunch of other stories. Amazon, McDonald's, Chipotle, and others raise wages, offer hiring bonuses across Massachusetts, U.S., as job market tightens. Restaurants nationwide raise prices amid soaring costs, labor shortage. A list of all the things you can't get right now. Can't find chicken wings, diapers, or a new car? Here's all the shortages hitting the economy. Now, why is this happening? Why are there so many shortages, my friends? I said, this is the Great Reset. Let me explain first by reading you this story from the Wall Street Journal. They say, inflation is here already.
From houses
and in the long run, let me mute that. There is a lot of upward pressure on prices. But between now and then lies a big question for investors in the economy. Is the Federal Reserve right to think that price rises we're seeing now are temporary and will abate by next year? Well, as I already mentioned, Max Kaiser basically said they're not telling us the truth. So I don't think it's temporary. And I'll go through the math and explain why. So I hope you've been paying attention. Hyperinflation is a tax on the working class. Joe Biden comes out and says, we're going to raise taxes on everybody who makes more than $400,000 a year. Read my lips. No taxes on anyone making less than $400,000. And all of the ignorant masses say, I don't make more than $400,000, so why should I care? It's heartbreaking, really, because the mass printing of money is how you tax the working class. And that's what he's doing. Raising taxes on those who make more than $400K makes no sense. You know why? Because those who make more than $400K have the ability, the means to move their money into other assets quite easily. And they will. This is Biden appeasing the masses as he strips the value from their paycheck. And unfortunately, the regular people, most normal, uninitiated people, don't understand that's what's happening. And rich people are rushing to buy up houses. You know why? You buy a house, property value goes up. It's safe from inflation, safer from inflation. People are buying Bitcoin like crazy and gold like crazy. And if you look at the recent Bitcoin price drop, regular people once again saying, oh, those people made a big mistake buying Bitcoin. No, they didn't. No, the rich people didn't. The people who made the mistake were the poor people who sold. We can track the accounts that are selling. It was poor people who sold. Let's read more from the Wall Street Journal. They say, some at the Fed are already having vague doubts, starting to talk about when to discuss removing some of their extraordinary stimulus, even as they continue to push the idea that inflation is likely to fall back of its own accord. Households are flush with cash. Personal savings. Look at this. Personal savings in November 2019, 1.19 trillion. And then by April 2020, 6.41 trillion. It drops way down, spikes back up again. They go on to say, the argument that inflation is temporary is simple. Consumer demand has been boosted massively by stimulus and the reopening release of pent-up demand. Supply is unable to keep up thanks to inventories and capabilities run down when demand collapsed during the lockdown. Workers unwilling to return to work and the overhang of COVID restrictions. As a result, there are some extraordinary price ramps in narrow areas, such as used cars, that are pushing up headline numbers. The resulting price rises will abate once spare cash is spent and business is back to normal. The difficulty is how to test whether this is right, because many of the usual gauges are being mucked up by the scale of the post-pandemic rebound. There are three broad areas to watch: the labor force, consumer demand, and inflation expectations. We'll read more, but let me just say something. Everybody's got money. Our savings are flush with cash. Not everybody has money, but a lot of people have money. So supply is low, demand is high. Why would somebody who's sitting on a pile of cash go and get a job? Their rent is being paid for. They can get their food. They can't get their computers. There's a shortage of a lot of things they'd normally want. But how much can a person do? If there's no PlayStations to buy, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't go work for PlayStation to make one. So I just got extra money and no reason to work. But therein lies the problem. If this person doesn't go to work on, say, making computer chips, or I think this is mostly Taiwan, so there's a lot of political ramifications going on with that. If a person says, I can't get what I want anyway, even if I work, what's the point? Because people don't see the bigger picture. There's less people getting the raw materials to make these things. There's less people putting together the not necessarily raw materials, but the more complex materials required for, say, building a toaster or a PlayStation. So somebody might work at a chip factory and not realize that they actually are contributing to the creation of laptop computers, desktop computers, cameras, etc. Someone might work at like an optics plant making lenses or something, and they're like, no reason for me to work. I can't buy the PlayStation that I want. If people don't need to work because they're flush with cash, things don't get made and the supply never comes back. That is the Great Reset. People eventually give up. They say, I can't buy a PlayStation. I don't want a PlayStation. Let me tell you something that's really fascinating right now. So as most of you know, I've been skateboarding for over 2 decades, like 22 years. But I recently started rollerblading inline. Mostly because it's just fun and I just want to go out and get some exercise. But I like doing tricks, right? And one of the reasons that I actually was interested in it is because videos started popping up all across the board of people actually rollerblading. You see, what happened was people couldn't buy things. This is true. This is what's happening. I've talked to some of these shops. During the pandemic, people couldn't go to bars. People couldn't go to restaurants and people couldn't get PlayStations. So what did they do? They went into their closets and dusted off their old pair of rollerblades. Started going rollerblading. I mean, that's a kind of a good thing, in my opinion. People should be physically active and not just sitting around playing video games and eating Doritos or whatever. Doritos are good. No beef. But, if that's all you're doing, you got a problem. That's the Great Reset. They have changed people's behaviors. They have taken away the things they don't want you to have that they think are bad. And then in response, we are seeing the algorithm of social media boost things like rollerblading. That's not all bad, but it is still... Many questions linger as to what this will mean for food prices and ultimately whether or not people will care. The rising inflation means people will be buying less food. Probably a good thing. It'll be better for the environment. Probably a good thing. People are more likely to go out and find joy in nature and just chilling. Probably a good thing. But think about what's happening. I'll tell you what's really fascinating about all of this. And I'm not alleging a conspiracy or anything. YouTube pushing van life. Remember this? In the year before COVID, van life was huge. I even went out and bought a van. Why? Because I'm apparently extremely susceptible to this kind of messaging. I saw a stupid commercial, an ad on Amazon for these big giant bike wheel foot brace skates or whatever. I bought some. I see rollerblade videos on Instagram. I buy some. It seems like big tech and these political elites are trying to encourage people not to buy food and to use less. That's the Great Reset. Is it authoritarian? Is it Machiavellian? Is it conspiratorial? I don't know. But I remember the year before the COVID, there was this woman who made a van life video. She made 2 and she got like 2 million subscribers. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to do it. All of a sudden, van life videos are popping up. What's van life? It's when people literally live in vans. They consume less. They get more joy out of just looking at trees. These are great things, in my opinion. But it makes you wonder about the ease of control in which people are manipulated. And it makes you wonder about, well, as they've been screaming that climate change is a big problem, we got to shut down, carbon emissions and all that. It makes you wonder if there wasn't a plan for some kind of Great Reset. I've long said, the Great Reset seems to be authoritarian, despotic, and nightmarish. However, I've always pointed out that there are some benefits. You got a big problem with these city people just consuming away and just living in cubicles that smell like sour milk. Not that I'm a big fan of the idea of resetting the global economy and injecting wokeness into it. Quite the opposite. but this is what we're seeing. They go to mention that workers can embed inflation through pay raises. There aren't enough workers, so wages go up. Those workers have more money to spend, so prices of goods and services rise. The workers then demand pay raises and on and on. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence that pay is going up, especially for workers at the bottom. Now, I've already showed you the story. McDonald's, Arby's, whatever. They're offering bonuses. Sign-on bonus, $1,000. Come take a job on the cashier. People don't want to do it. So ultimately what happens is it may cause a rapid societal transformation. I think it is. And it's going to dramatically reduce the standard of living only for the poor people. And that's where things, in my opinion, get bad. Or it's tough. If you're smart and you're paying attention, you might be okay. That's why I'm not freaking out and pounding the table. Those of you who are watching my show, you may have already bought some crypto or some gold or whatever. Not that I'm giving you advice to do that. I'm just saying you've been paying attention, so you've probably hedged some of your dollars somewhere else. But the people who live in cities are going to be devastated by this. The Democrat voters are going to be devastated by this. The people who pay attention and are watching the news, less so. But it's still a big problem. You see, the wealthy elites are consolidating their power. Throughout the past year, the Great Reset, whatever it is, because it's on the World Economic Forum website, has talked about things just like this. People can't go out to restaurants. They lock the restaurants down. People stop buying things. Demand is evaporated, and it reset our system of commerce, except for the rich. I mean, we're already seeing the stories, and maybe I'll cover this in greater detail in my main segment. There's a punk rock show in Florida. If you're not vaccinated, $1,000 to come in. If you are, $18. That means rich people don't got to worry about anything. Always with this climate change stuff, what do we see? Barack Obama buys beachfront property. Wealthy elites buying Miami beachfront property. But they keep saying that in 10, 15 years, it's going to be underwater. Why would they buy beachfront property that they think is going to be underwater unless they think it won't be? Now, many people have said that proves they're lying about climate change. I don't think so. I think the plan is simple. They can tell you not to do it so that they can. They want to fly in private jets. They just got to tell you not to fly. If 99% of people stop flying, they'll get to keep flying. So what's probably happening, in my opinion, is the wealthy people are saying, hey, look, all these people are, farting and pooping where they drink and everything's getting bad. That means we won't be able to fart and poop where we drink. Make them stop and we can do whatever we want. Isn't that how it's always been? The wealthy elites have their big mansions, 20 rooms, and they complain about you leaving the lights on. You shouldn't flush your toilet or leave your lights on. It's bad for everybody. Well, they're not wrong. But shouldn't they lead by example? What gives them the right to continue their standard of living and stripping it away from everybody else? I don't know, but it's gonna hit you. So they go on to the Wall Street Journal to mention that worker prices are going to go up, wages. They're already desperate to hire people. The wages aren't going to go down, which means the prices have to stay up. And that's what we're seeing. Restaurants nationwide raise prices amid soaring costs and labor shortage. You get the story. I don't need to read too much into it, but I'll give you a quote. Alan Natkiel, owner of Georgia's North Side in Concord, New Hampshire, posted on Facebook. Due to the surging costs, I hate saying what I'm about to say, but here it is. I will be raising prices on select items to offset my increased wholesale costs. He wrote, when supply chain issues and availability come back around, I pledge to adjust my prices accordingly in order to maintain a menu that is fresh, dynamic, and very important to me, affordable to the Concord community. The price of St. Louis ribs, for example, are up 50% over the past 3 months, he said. And fryer oil prices have almost doubled, while food service gloves have tripled in cost. What's going to happen here? It's going to cause inflation. The wealthy people will have no problem buying their $30 cheeseburger, and you can eat the cicadas. You see how it works? Yeah, it's going to be gross. The rich people are always going to eat like kings. They're always going to get their fryer oil, but not you. You're going to live in the pod and you're going to eat the bugs. That's how it's always been. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because for me, first and foremost, My business is doing very well, and many thanks to most of you, we're able to expand. I'm not interested in going to fancy filet mignon dinners or anything like that. I actually just ate, what did we eat the other day? Like Domino's, and I probably shouldn't do that though, but we get hibachi a lot if you watch the vlog. It's not too expensive. It's like, I think $12 for a meal, and it's like fried rice and chicken. It's not bad. It's like you watch them make it. It's pretty good. I could probably do better, but I don't have a lot of time for cooking, so getting something that's healthy. So I'm not super interested in eating all this, garbage and stuff, but I will point out, I'm not worried about eating bugs, personally. I'm not worried about living in the pod. I actually like the idea of van life. I'm confused by this in a certain way. Conservatives seem to be the ones that are mostly upset about this idea of living with nature, but they're the ones who actually know how to do it relative to liberals, I guess. The liberals are the ones cheering for this. It's like there's this meme where it's like, climate change is happening. What are you doing? And the liberals, in order to prepare for this devastation in 9 years, are getting liberal arts degrees and living in cities. It's like, okay. So I understand this. The idea that global elites, I'm not saying they are, but would want to reset global capitalism. We know the World Economic Forum has called for this. Whether or not this is actually on purpose, I can't say, but we know they want it. So I understand the problem there. Someone coming and destroying your way of life because they don't think you should have the right to do it because they believe in, whatever. I understand that problem. It's a problem of authoritarianism. I do think, though, you need more memes mocking the liberals who are voting for it, because it's like, I'll tell you this, if there's a great reset, conservatives aren't going to notice. So when I moved out of the city and now I live, kind of in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's somewhere, you're always somewhere, right? But, I see mountains and trees when I look outside. We're doing all right. We're fine. Like I walked around the other day. I just grabbed the cicadas. I throw them to chickens. Chickens eat them up. We only have one chicken that lays eggs because she's a transplant. She's a rehome and she's a little older. But I've had chickens before. If all hell breaks loose and inflation skyrockets and people can't buy their cars and their video games or whatever, conservatives are going to be doing the same thing they've always done. Go outside without a mask on. They don't live near, in massive proximity. Most conservatives. There's conservatives in cities. So for me, I haven't really noticed anything. It's crazy when I talk to people having left the cities about what things are like now. And I'm like, man, I moved out to the middle of nowhere. Everything's kind of been the same. Haven't really noticed any big changes. And I see a lot of conservatives saying that. I'm not going to eat the bugs because I don't have to. We got chickens. We get our own eggs. But if you live in the city, you're going to have to. This is where the Great Reset is actually a problem for liberals, not conservatives. People who live in cities aren't going to get their beef. They're not going to get their chickens. And that's why all these articles keep popping up telling liberals to eat the cicadas. Meanwhile, I live in the middle of nowhere. And while there has been a problem with getting beef due to, I think it was like USDA regulation or something, we went to a farm. We got a bunch of beef. Had no issue. Got a bunch of chicken, got a bunch of chorizo and sausage, and we got it in the deep freezer. It was not hard. Local farms, easy stuff. We got our own chickens. We got one laying eggs. We don't have to eat bugs. In fact, we give the bugs to the chickens. Chicken's going to give us eggs. You live in a city, however. Nah, it's the city people who are going to be drinking, cicada slushies and eating grass burger. That's true. And that's what I think many conservatives need to realize. The cities are the problem, and the cities have been the problem for a long time. Police brutality? Why, that's in cities. Environmental problems and smog and brake pad particulates floating up in the air? That's in cities. Air pollution? Cities. Human waste problem? Cities. Sewage? Cities. Plastic? Cities. It's all the cities. People who live out in the middle of nowhere are more resilient. They know how to take care of themselves, more so. And they cause less of a problem. The big cities are the problem. So it's weird. I mean, I get it. I look at all the news, but those cicada stories are pointed at liberals, right? Not conservatives. It's interesting. That's why I say, I've been telling people get out of the cities. You don't want to live there. You're going to be, you're already, here's what's really, really funny. I'll tell you what's really, really funny. I see conservatives posting that meme saying, I will not eat the bugs. I will not live in the pod. And I'm just like, bro, in the cities, they're being told to eat cicadas, and they are. In Leesburg, Virginia, which is not a big city, they're already serving cicada tacos. And guess what? If you live in New York City, you already live in the pod. Have you seen some of these apartments? It's like a closet. You get like a 10 by 8 closet, and there's no bathroom. That's New York living. They already live in the pods, and they're being encouraged to eat the bugs. You live out in the middle of nowhere. You got a big house. You got trees. You got a yard. Hey, so I look at the people in the city. I'm like, you do you, man. I'm chilling. We got a garden. We're growing our own vegetables. We're not self-sustainable on where we are right now, but we do have farms that can easily supply the local area, and I can easily pay for it. So we'll see how this plays out. In the long run, however, what you need to do if you are conservative, I don't think you have to worry about a lot of the eat the bug stuff because for all the reasons I mentioned, but you do need to watch out for your dollars. I will not give anybody financial advice other than pay attention to inflation. That's what I mean by watch out for your dollars. I mean, just pay attention to what's going on with inflation because dollar is going to lose value. What do I do? First, no advice because I have no idea. I'm taking chances. I wish I knew. I don't. But I'm certainly buying, cryptocurrency, some gold and silver. I bought a bunch of silver last year. Prices doubled. And some water and food. I don't know what's going to happen. But I can tell you that this looks like the Great Reset, at the very least. Look at this. Record jobs available, but joblessness is high. How insane is that? People don't want to work. Long-run inflation is still anchored. So we'll see what happens. But I'll tell you this. Don't be surprised if McDonald's value meals cost, they used to have a dollar menu. Now it's like the $1.20 menu, $1.40. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year, a cheeseburger, like a regular, cheeseburger at McDonald's, $5. I'll tell you what's really interesting. U.S. Debt Clock says the average U.S. family has $36K right now in savings. That's money right there. They say in the next 4 years, by 2025, the average savings will be $500,000. If everyone has $500,000, that means no one has anything. Who's going to want to work? And if no one works, who's going to buy anything? People are going to be sitting on money they can't spend. The money becomes worthless. We're watching it happen already. The fact that McDonald's is telling people they'll give them $1,000 to come take a job, $1,000 to get a sign-on bonus, and people still don't want it. How much do you have to offer someone to take the job? Then let's say you're paying someone $40, $50K a year to work at McDonald's flipping burgers. Now you got to charge more for the burgers. You see how it works? It's very simple math. We'll see how this plays out. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you then.